All right, so you guys will have to bear with me. I think this is like the first full mixing tutorial I've ever done. I had to teach myself how to capture all the audio and everything on my laptop. So anyway, today we're looking at snare drum. Here's the session I have pulled up. I recorded this clip the other day. I'm going to play it. Right now I have all the plugins on my snare channels deactivated. I'm going to play it and let you guys hear what it sounds like with nothing in the mix. So here it is. Oh. So that's just kind of everything mixed except for the snare drum. That's the snare raw. So let's dive into my setup and the microphones and stuff. So if you've watched my videos, you guys will notice that for snare drum, I like to use an SM57 on the top snare and an SE8 paired together right next to each other. The reason for that is just to blend different sounds together and come up with a universal snare sound that I really like. And I like how the SE8 has a lot of warmth to it on the snare top, and it brings out a lot of the smack in the snare, and the 57 brings out a lot of crack in like mid-range of the snare drum. And so I like blending those two together. And of course on the bottom snare, I've got another SE8 on the bottom. So I'm running 3 snare mics right now. You can see here, I am busing those to a snare bus right here, my bus 1. And then what I've done is I've duplicated that snare bus, and I've got that for my reverb. And so you might be asking, why wouldn't you just put the reverb on the snare bus? I'll get into that a little bit later, but I just like being able to mix my reverb in on the snare kind of parallel style, like you would parallel compression. It just sounds better to me. It's cleaner that way too. I'm not a rocket scientist when it comes to audio engineering. I've just from experience learned a lot of this stuff. And so, you guys don't have to implement what I'm doing, but you can try it and let me know what you think. So that being said, let's dive into the SM57 first. So up here, I like to use the F6 EQ plugin for my EQs. And so let's single out the 57 here. I'm going to play that. So that's the 57 raw. And so what I would do here to start like mixing in this session is I would turn this EQ on, and I would start mixing some of the harsh frequencies out of that SM57. So I'm going to play it. I'm going to scan for bad frequencies with the plugin and pull a little bit of those out. So let's do that. Right there, I don't want a lot of that, and pull just a little bit of that out. So right there, I don't like that nasty ring, so I'm gonna pull that down. I don't want to pull too much of that down because I'll lose. Sorry, let me stop that. I don't want to pull too much of that down because I'll lose some of that beefiness and my snare sound. So I'm just gonna pull just a little bit. So right here, I like to cut 1K a lot for mids in my snares. It just cleans them up. Sorry, let me start the tracks over. So, moving on. Now for high end, I like to boost the high end in my snare a little bit just to brighten it up a little bit, let it cut through the mix. So usually when I get over here to the higher frequencies on this plugin, I start boosting. And one trick I've learned is I don't want to overdo the high frequencies. Like if I do this, that sounds bad. So I just like to do a little touch of high boosting. So I'm pretty happy right now with how the 57's sounding with the EQ. Next, I like to use this plugin. I think if this is just stock and Pro Tools, I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it's a stock plugin. It might be a Waves plugin. I don't know. You guys will have to forgive me. I don't remember where all my plugins come from. This is the Trans X plugin, and so basically it like enhances the transient of the snare. And so what it's going to do is it's just going to give it more punch. And there's a preset here that I like to use called More Punch. So right now it's bypass, so this is what we're dealing with. If I turn that on, it just adds a little bit of bite and attack to that 57. Put it off. On. And then I usually end my snare chains with a compressor. I like to use the DBX 160 plugin. And guys, I'm just using the snare preset. So let me play it without it and then I'll turn it on. So it just adds a lot more punch, makes it a little bit louder. Let me now compare the whole chain with it off, and then we'll turn it back on. So this is just a 57. So pretty big difference there with that one. Then I'll move on to the SE8. So let me single that out, and it's the same process. I'm going to open up the F6. This one I left the EQ for you guys to see just to save some time. So I'll play it and then I'll unbypass this. So that EQ really cleans that mic up. And again, you can see cutting a lot of mids on this one. Oh, my dad's FaceTiming me. Hang on. Sorry about that. My dad and I are recording a collab video for Instagram actually this week. Okay, so back to the mixing. So on the SE8, the EQ is cleaning up a lot of the low mids on this one. So you can see I've scooped quite a bit. And then the second plugin I have is the Trans X plugin again. So this one I'm using a preset I found under this last guy's name, just called Drum Bus Punch, and I really like it. The cool thing about this plugin is you can you can tweak what you're boosting on the transient. And so you can see I've boosted some low mids here, cut a little bit of mids, boost a little bit of highs, and I pull a little bit of lows. So that's just kind of what I've done that sounds good to my ear. So here's what it sounds like without it, and then I'll undo the bypass. So you can hear it just adds a lot of clarity to the punch of that snare channel. And then of course I've got the same DBX compressor, except this time I'm using the overheads preset on that one, mainly because the SC8 mics, they're more of like an overhead mic in my opinion, or can be. And so that setting just sounded better to me. So let me turn that off, everything off on this one, so you guys can hear. Gosh, you think I'd have my shortcuts down by now. All right, so here we go. So it really cleans up that snare mic there. And then for snare bottom, I also have another SC8. This one I don't do as much stuff with. I've got a stock EQ here that I use in Pro Tools. So I'm just cleaning up some low end and low mids, and boosting just a little bit of high to let the bottom snare have some brightness and breathe. And then I've got the DBX again on the overhead preset setting, because it's an SC8. And so here's what that sounds like by itself. Well, actually, first, let me turn those off and then compare for you. So here's the bottom mic. Then with everything on. So I really like how that compressor squashes the bottom snare a little bit, but then also like lets it breathe a little more. It just kind of adds a little bit of air to it. And then you guys can see here what I do after that is I kind of blend the three. And so what I found is I've always got the SC8 here in the middle, usually the loudest, because I like the warmth of the attack, and that 57 usually right behind it to keep some mid driving in there. And then my bottom snare is usually the quietest. So here's what they all sound like together. So if I brought the bottom way up, it sounds nasty. I don't like that, so I'll bring it back down a little bit. Okay, moving on. So now we're gonna go to the snare bus. Snare bus, I throw another EQ on. This one, I usually boost a little bit of low mids, cut a little bit more mids. This time I actually cut some high-end frequency that I don't like overall on the snare, and I add just a little bit of a bypass here just to keep that sizzle under control. I hit my snare drum pretty hard, and so I don't want the high end to like pierce your ears. So, and then this is something that I've been doing lately. This infected mushroom plugin. I've just been kind of just turning it on and just playing with the settings. I always change these, but this is the setting I've been using. I've got a little bit of lows boosted, the push button boosted, and the magic button. I don't really mess with the input. Sometimes I'll boost the highs, but I found that it can be a little bit too much. So, and then I've got a stock compressor in Pro Tools here, which is the snare compressor preset, and that's it. So here's what the snare bus sounds like without anything on it, and then I'll turn them on. turn it back off. Back on. So I don't know, it just sounds good. It just sounds good. And when I like something that sounds good, I stop. I don't want to like overdo it. Okay, so this is where I think a lot of my snare sound comes from, is the reverb. So I duplicate the snare bus here. And oh yeah, and then my rooms channel, you can see I barely mix snare to my room bus. I don't know, I just found that it's just like too much sometimes. But I do have that there in case I want to get a bigger room sound out of the snare. But what I found with this reverb technique I'm about to show you guys is you kind of get like a room sound that way. So let's check this out. I've got another EQ on here for my reverb. And then I am loving this plugin like a lot. The MBDB Verb plugin. Shout out to Kyle May Drums on Instagram. I watched some of his mixing stuff, and he did a video on this plugin. I was like, I gotta try it, and I've been using it ever since. So I created my own preset and saved it in here, and these are the settings. And so you can see that I'm really just using the small reverb slider over here at about 4 seconds length. And I've got the EQ for the reverb, so I'll turn that on. I already showed you guys that. Then I have another stock compressor. That's just to kind of squash the reverb and let it breathe a little bit better. So what I do is I just mix it in like you would parallel compression. So here's the snare without it, and then I'll slowly mix it in. So right about there is where I kind of like to put it, and I just think that it sounds good, and it just gives it like a roomy reverb sound, and it's just a clean reverb. Like in the past, I would add reverb directly on my snare channels, like the snare top mic channel chain, and it just would always sound like muddy after it went through like the snare bus and everything. And I've just found that like having my own snare bus for reverb just makes the biggest difference in the world, mixing it in like you would parallel compression. I don't know. I'm sure there's other ways to do it. This is just my way that I found to be helpful, and I love it, and so I'm not changing it. So yeah, that's how I mix my snare. I want to also show you guys how the overheads come into play. I put my overheads right over my snare mic, and so I get a lot of snare in the overheads. So I want to single those out and let you listen to those really quick. So here those are. And so I'm getting a lot of snare attack in my overheads with how I mic my kit, and that just adds to the overall snare sound. So if I add the snare channels in my overheads, this is what it sounds like. And I just love how that all comes together for a cool snare sound. And then of course, when you mix it with the rest of the kit, and you've got compression on the whole drum bus and that sort of thing, it sounds like this. So like listening to this, I could maybe do a little bit more reverb here. and maybe a little bit more snare bottom. Just all kind of the taste. Sounds so good. All right, so like I'm proud of that snare sound. So let me with the full mix, I want to bypass all my snare plugins. So here's full mix again without any plugins on the snare. Here I'll start adding them back in. Yeah, I mean, that sounds good. And like that reverb technique just changes everything. Like here, let me play it again with no reverb and then I'll turn it back on. So no reverb here. Here we go. Like it doesn't sound bad, right? But there's no like body and like room to that snare. So let's add the reverb. So no reverb here. Now I'm adding it. Done. Add. Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, so that's how I mix my snare drum, and it's a little different every session. Like I don't do this every single time, but this is kind of the template I've come up with. You know, like I'll change the EQ depending on the song and the style of music that I'm playing. And sometimes I'll change the reverb settings too. Like I've got another reverb setting that I've dialed in for like worship sounds where the reverb decays a little bit more. And I can do another video on that sometime. But the snare drum I used on this recording was my dial tune maple snare, and so it has like a good high punch to it. Now it works for some worship music too, especially like the newer gospel-y stuff that's come out. I'll have to do another video though to show you guys like that fat worship drum sound with my Black Beauty. So, but yeah, that's how I mix my snare drum. I hope this is helpful, and please remember to support the channel, like the video, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It's been a while since I've said that. But yeah, peace.